Like virtually every problem in this country, the blame rests on state control, and the Fort McMurray fires are no exception. The fire began on May 3rd, where it swept through the region, destroying over 2,000 homes, forcing the largest wildfire evacuation in Alberta's history. But what factors made this fire so destructive? Was it because Alberta Premier Rachel Notley slashed $5.3 million from the Alberta firefighting budget only weeks before? Or because her government refused to utilize Canada's largest water bomber? While those were certainly factors, there are deeper concerns to be worried about. 5 years ago, Slave Lake, another northern Alberta town, had a massive wildfire clear through the neighborhood. The damage was totaled at $800 million. The province funded an inquiry, and 18 months later, a report was published. The first recommendation was to cut down trees near municipal buildings, roads, and hospitals. But in this age of environmental fascism, where cutting down trees is considered a sinful act, the report was ignored. In fact, just ignoring the report would have been better than what actually happened. Places like Fort McMurray, under pressure from environmental groups, actually planted more trees next to the highways and buildings, all in the name of ecotourism. While the wildfires was a natural disaster, the overall damage, especially in Fort McMurray, was man-made. Environmentalists literally fueled the fire with short-term thinking. Aesthetics took priority over safety, and the result was devastating. Not that these fascists care at all. Imagine if a Quebec town of over 80,000 people was evacuated over a natural disaster. Justin Trudeau would spend billions and he'd visit for a photo op. But when it comes to the home of Canada's oil sands, all he said was that he would match the Rockefeller-owned Red Cross donations. As well, when Russia offered help with a handful of firefighting aircraft capable of dumping 42 tons of fire retardant, Justin turned them down, as well as offers from the US and Mexico. Tom Moffat, a former NDP candidate from southern Alberta, called the fire karmic, implying that the home of the oil sands deserves the destruction. And while he did apologize, certainly there are plenty of leftists that are cheering the destruction. And if they're not cheering the wildfire, they're calling it an act of global warming. But while officials have not yet determined the cause of the fire, many believe it was lightning combined with dry conditions of the May season. Nothing out of the ordinary, just nature, like a landslide or an earthquake, an unfortunate but natural disaster. We are in an El Niño cycle, where water temperatures in the Pacific Ocean rise, causing numerous changes like warmer weather here in Canada. British Columbia has had milder winters, while Alberta has been drier. The Fort McMurray fire was the result of an El Niño cycle, aging forests, bureaucratic mismanagement, and a tree planting campaign that was discouraged but ignored after the Slave Lake fire in 2011. In a world where democracy rules, where private property is undermined in the name of environmental justice, where firefighting budgets can be cut at the discretion of a socialist premier, and where international help can be discarded by a group of politicians in Ottawa, the result is a disaster that is far worse than it should have been.
nationwide here in Japan. So there is, I think, a lot of reason to be skeptical of that. But I think we also have to reserve our skepticism for the other side of the argument, in terms of people who, for example, claim that 14,000 deaths could be attributed directly to the immediate few months after Fukushima, which I think is, again, a highly dubious study with a lot of methodological problems.